The only thing cooling off in December is the temperature because the heat is getting turned up this weekend in SEC basketball.
Kentucky clashes with Gonzaga, looking for a bounce back after that Clemson game. Texas locks horns with defending national champions UConn, and it's one of the best rivalries in sports with 170 years of history. It's the border war between Kansas and Missouri.
Plus, are the Tennessee Volunteers the number one team in the country? And who made a big statement in the SEC ACC Challenge that not enough people are talking about right now? We'll discuss it in the rebound, all that and more in today's Hoop Southbound show.
Maddie, we had a full week there doing shows back to back days like that. I will. You were the smart one taking yesterday off when we did the recording, and you're like, I'm taking a nap. We could have done the rebound today. Honestly, though, we've already created a 2 hours worth of content over the ACC SEC challenge. I'm glad we get to talk about some other basketball today, but man, I don't know if I ever want to do 5 shows in a week like this ever again moving forward.
It was I tried real hard to hang in there, and I think about the third quarter, which I don't know how I could have fallen asleep during that Auburn Duke game, but somehow it happened. I got up this morning, I watched the rest of what I missed, and it was wild. So I'm not sure why. I think it was just, the getting up early and
The 6 a.m. schedule's caught up with you with work and everything else. Yeah. No, you were alive with me there for a little bit. You were texting me. It's like, hey, you plan on doing the show tonight, doing the rebound recap? And I was like, yeah, if you're down to join me, you're welcome to. Didn't hear anything from you after like the 8 minute remaining in the Auburn Duke game last night. A lot of late nights going on here, but we got the rebounds for the ACC SEC Challenge. SEC, if you haven't heard, dominates 14-12, which was higher than both of our expectations. I had 13-3. Maddie had 12-4. Even better. SEC truly dominant this weekend. But yesterday was one of the craziest days in college basketball we've seen so far this season. I'm going to give you this list of top 5 teams here and the results to their games over the last 2 days. Number 1, Kansas, lost. Number 2, Auburn, lost last night to Duke. And then on Tuesday, number 4, Kentucky, lost. And number 5, Marquette, lost yesterday as well. 4 out of 5 teams in the top 5, the AP top 5, lost this weekend. You know who didn't lose? The Tennessee Volunteers. Maddie, are the Volunteers the number 1 team in the country?
I mean, just it's hard to say. We kind of talked about Tennessee being national title contenders in our previous episode, and I said I still think they can be, but I need to see more. And I almost think this is kind of what AP is going to look at because you've got all these teams that lost. They're kind of just the remainder. Well, while they do have, some decent wins, they just haven't had anything crazy yet. So it may just be they're the only ones that are still hanging in there, continuing to get wins. So it may be one of those like they rank them as number one, but a lot of people are going to say they're not the number one team. So I think it's going to be one of those things like if they are, they're going to get a lot of heat for it, and a lot of people are going to question it. And then if they aren't, they're still in a great space.
Yeah, look, there aren't many undefeated teams left in the country right now. A lot of teams got knocked off. You slowly watch the tally with Kim Palm as it goes down from his Twitter and Blue Sky account, where it's just like the numbers just keep going down and down and down and down on who's remaining. And here's Tennessee right here on the top right now. They were voted number 3 last week in the AP top 25. They're the lone survivor here. I want to go through some results because there's a two counters to this argument. On one hand, you're sitting there talking about um, there's a lot of teams out there that are still really good and like deserve a conversation for number one, even though they lost the game. And I think there's a very good conversation that to be had that Auburn has probably the best resume right now when it comes to just pure wins. Even though they lost to Duke last night, Auburn might be the number one team in the country. That's not really how AP voting tends to go. Someone's going to look at like the record and everything else, but like when you go through the numbers, there's not a game this season Tennessee hasn't won by double digits so far this year. The ACC SEC Challenge, they beat Syracuse 96-70. Game before that, they played Tennessee Martin, not a very good basketball team, but they beat them 78-35. You go a little bit further back than that, they beat Baylor by double digits, 77-62, and honestly, in that first half, it looks like that margin was going to be bigger than that. They beat Virginia by 20. They hung 100 on Austin Peay. They put up 92 against Montana, 77-55 against Louisville on the road in that game as well. No team has gotten within double digits against them so far. I don't think Miami's going to do it when we preview the Jimmy V Classic next week going on in New York. And honestly, when you look at it right now, just off of pure schedule, the computer right now, the only loss they have is when Tennessee goes to Auburn to play in Neville. That's the only projected loss on here when you go down by individual games. And then their projected record right now is 26-5 and going 13-5. We talked about it like 14 is probably the number to win the SEC this year. That's probably close to winning the SEC, and a 26-win season is what the computers are saying right now. There's a good case. There's a really good case for Tennessee. They're second in KenPom right now. They're first in the net. They have on top of all of that, they have a couple of quad one wins as well. Tennessee's a good basketball team. Tennessee's a good basketball team, and it's hard to not rank the best when you look at metrics and a good resume and beating the crud out of everyone, the number one team in the country. But there are other teams out there that maybe we're just not talking about yet. Maddie, who do some other teams, when you look at the win-loss record right now, Florida, undefeated. Oregon's undefeated. Utah State, obviously not going to be one of those teams. Same with UC Irvine, one of the few undefeated teams left in the country, and Rhode Island. Those teams aren't in the conversation. So if you're looking for an undefeated team, 2 out of 3 right now are coming from the SEC, and the other one's Oregon. Sitting at number 16 right now. And I don't know where to go, Maddie. I don't know where to go to find the number one team. I think there's teams with better resumes, but right now the Volunteers, I mean, they're a good basketball team, and they're undefeated. Any
I
further thoughts there?
I would say we look deeper into Oregon if Alabama was playing better basketball right now, because that win I feel like would mean so much more. But I mean, out of those teams, I feel like Tennessee does have the best odds to be that number one spot. It's like I said, it's just one of those things where the resume is still a little shaky, which we've seen teams be ranked number one and not have a great resume. We've seen teams make the NCAA tournament because they've won so many games but not have a great resume. So it's just one of those things. It really depends on who the voters are and how they're going to make this decision to vote.
Yeah, and here's one more thing, just from a metric standpoint, which AP voters aren't going to even look at. More than likely, Tennessee is top 10 both in offense and defense right now this season. They're playing well on both ends of the ball, and they've played against decent competition. So, as far as the argument goes right now, Tennessee should be ranked the number one team in the country when this week's AP poll comes out, because honestly, I don't think there's another option. I don't think there's another option out there unless you're looking at possibly, I don't know. Iowa State's pretty good, but they do have one loss. So yeah, I would have to go Vols right now to start this conversation as the number one team in the country. Let's move on. We got other things to talk about as well.
Yeah, so there was obviously a lot of domination in the SEC ACC Challenge, so much so that some fantastic performances are kind of getting overshadowed. David, what performance really stood out to you? And that you don't think is getting enough attention here?
Yeah, the one that really stood out to me that as I'm watching other basketball games and I look up at the quad box on my YouTube TV and I just kind of notice the score, Mississippi State beat the heck out of Pitt. Pitt's the number 18 team in the country, and Mississippi State just smacked them. Absolutely smacked them in this basketball game. And Murphy and Nowako, great games all around for Mississippi State. Now, let's just break down some of these numbers here when you go to the box score, and then we'll go through the pure domination. I went through some of these last night, but here's some of these key performances. Mike Nowako had 18 points and 11 rebounds, a double-double in there, and 4 of those were on the offensive end, and he was 7 for 9 from the floor. Josh Hubbard was not the biggest star on the court tonight. He was 12 points, went 5 for 12 from the field and hit 2 threes. That's okay. It's not great, but Keyshawn Murphy, 20 points, 7 rebounds, a block, and went 8 for 10 from the floor in 24 minutes coming off the bench. This team was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, the stat sheet here, it's not even close. Mississippi State shot 26% better from the floor than Pitt. They didn't have to do it all hitting threes either in this game. They won the glass by 22 boards. They won the assists by 10 assists. Were locked up in the steals battle. They had 4 more blocks. They had 9 more fast break points. They won the paint. This is the stupidest number of the night. They won the paint 52-14. Like, that's not real. That's not a real stat. Like that didn't happen. No way. This was a dominant performance by Mississippi State there in the hump. And I mean, they came with one mission in mind, and that was to beat the heck out of Pitt. And they embarrassed them. They embarrassed them. And the most ridiculous highlight of the night was one of the Mississippi State fans sending me the picture of why would you try to pick a fight with Cam Matthews? Like, why would you try to pick a fight with Cam Matthews? Like, dude.
But another one that I want to touch on is Ole Miss and Louisville. While, we do see Ole Miss as a little bit of a better team than Louisville, they did have to go to the KFC Yum Center, play on their home court. And not to mention, Ken Palm had this game super, super close and had Louisville winning the game. Looking just over the stats, I mean, these guys played some excellent basketball. You got Champadula producing 16 points, Dre Davis with 20, David Barnes coming off the bench with 11, and they just played good team basketball. You've got everybody going from 20 points, and then some people coming off the bench. Jamin Brakefield, a huge one for me, only scored 1 point in this basketball game. He's one of the best players on this Ole Miss team. So everybody else stepped up around him, showed they know how to play team basketball, and I think this is a very good sign for Ole Miss and a very good case to give them a little extra hype.
Yeah, and I'll say this: listen to Ion College basketball. There was not enough love, from the CBS brand out there, giving attention to these Mississippi schools who just played some really good basketball. And I mean, like, there were, big brands out there having huge games and everything else, and games they needed to win, and every other possible scenario in the world. But the 2 Mississippi schools went out, played 2 good, decent ACC teams, one on the road and one at home, and one that was in the top 25, and one that was close to a breakout and was in the championship game for Battle for Atlantis. And these 2 teams just spanked them. I mean, spanked them. Like, it was bad. Not even a contest at the end of the day between these 2 games that were never close. Games that are going to age well in their resume. You can't give enough praise right now to Mississippi State and Ole Miss. You really, really can't. These were excellent performances. And I mean, look, the power rankings that we do when they come out next week, it's still going to be hard to move everyone because they had really good performances. Mm-hmm. But those power rankings are going to be like 14 teams deep. And like, it's how we're going to be like, everybody here's good. I don't know what to tell you. And it's like, it won't be disrespect to Mississippi State. It's like, listen, this is not 2012 anymore. Being 12th in the SEC, if we power rank you there, it's not an insult.
I mean, they kept talking about it during the SEC ACC challenge that several people several, bracket analysts think that there are going to be at least 12 teams from the SEC in the tournament.
Yeah.
Nolan already being the big one.
Yeah.
But if you're ranked 12, you're probably getting in.
I, I, after a couple of these wins, the entire conference should get like this is just
The
absolutely
SEC
wild.
versus all y'all. That's
Yeah, SEC.
actually the new name of the tournament.
Yeah, yeah, that's the field. 16 teams from the SEC make the field after the ACC or the SEC ACC challenge turned out to be the ACC. I don't mean to steal a joke here, but it was perfect one. The SEC ACC mild inconvenience was how that went down. But yeah, we got more ball to talk, but you got to respect these Mississippi schools. You got to pay attention to them. They're good basketball teams this year, really good basketball teams. Well, we got a big week of basketball ahead. There are a ton of great matchups happening across the country that are going to be they're going to present huge opportunities for teams' resumes come March. We got elite coaches, another challenge, and a big rivalry game.
So let's get the preview started. After a loss in the SEC ACC challenge, the Kentucky Wildcats are going East Coast to West Coast. The Wildcats take on Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. This is a huge opportunity for this Kentucky resume there in Seattle. Also, a chance to get back in the win column. David, it's not a true road test, but it should be considered close enough.
Close enough. It really is. Having to go all the way out there to Washington to play this game and home state for Gonzaga. You know what this is. But yeah, despite finishing fifth in the battle for Atlantis overall, Gonzaga is playing pretty good basketball to start this season. Now, for Gonzaga, the guards on this team aren't the biggest stars really that you're going to see. This roster because they all have like an equal involvement to some extent. There's a range where better players are seeing more minutes, obviously, but like the percentage differences aren't crazy. Caliph Battle, yes, you heard that name correctly. Caliph Battle, the Arkansas transfer, he's seeing the most possessions right now at 21.4% where he's seeing the ball, and then Ryan Nimhard is the other tier one kind of guard. And then you go to the next step down, and the margin of usage only drops by like 4%. So you've got a backcourt here with guys like Hickman and Stormer who are getting a really, really good minutes and really, really good involvement as well on this team. So, you're looking at a team with a really good backcourt and a decent front court as well when you look at guys like Graham Ike, who's going to be on, a presence there in the front court for Gonzaga, and then Braden Huff and Ben Gregg, also really good players as well. All these guys, 6'9", 6'10", 230, big bodied, strong guys that are going to be down there in the paint. It's going to be a tough matchup. This is a good roster and a team that's playing really quality basketball right now when you look at Gonzaga.
Yeah, I think they're very comparable to Kentucky when you look at just kind of the way their roster plays out, because you have a couple of guys who can do it all, but they play really good team basketball. Like you mentioned, Graham Ike, that's going to be a tall task for Carr and Almanor. He leads the Bulldogs in points per game or rebounds per game, and at only 18 minutes per game, there's a lot more room for him to produce. So if he's having a good night, they're going to have to watch out for him because he's likely to run away with this ball game.
Yeah, to me, this game is really the curious case of Andrew Carr, right? He's the guy when you look at like the matchup for all the guys in the front court. He's different. He's got a very different game. He can get out there and shoot for three, stretch the court. He's kind of an X factor in this game because Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison are similar somewhat to Braden Huff, Graham Ike, and Ben Gregg. Big body, traditional style, somewhat number 5 guys. Andrew Carr, stretching the floor and playing a different style of basketball is something really different, that presents this game here. I think you have an opportunity here to run Amari Williams and, Andrew Carr together in a very interesting fashion that gives Gonzaga, fits really on the defensive end on how do we play this with 2 big guys out here and how do we play it with a big guy who can contribute from the 3 as well. There's an interesting way to attack this if you're Mark Pope coming up with different solutions to this game. But one thing that I do think that Gonzaga does really well, and this got talked about nonstop when after that Clemson Kentucky game on ESPN where they were like, what cost Kentucky this game? The problem is they don't have I hate talk like this, but the problem is they don't have a guy who can go out and get you a bucket whenever basketball players step up when they know their role, and there are enough veteran leadership on this Kentucky team to someone to go out and be that guy who is the get a bucket guy. It's just a matter of that person stepping up for this team. For Gonzaga, it's pretty well clear right now. It's Caliph Battle, who's been a good scorer everywhere that he's gone. He can shoot, he can drive, he can do whatever you want him to do. I think that role for Kentucky really needs to go to Otega Away. Away is the best driver of the basketball on this team. And when Kentucky's not hot, I want to see this guy, grinding out points and keep this team where they want to be. I think that could be his role in this team. Him or Lamont Butler. Pick your guy who's going to be your big leader on this team. But really, Otega Away was over 50% at one point last season with Oklahoma just driving the basketball to the paint. He was super proficient from two and someone that, you can get points when you need points when he's driving to the paint, and that fits very well into the Mark Pope system. We showed you all, how a typical setup that BYU had and put the numbers there. Tego Away fits well as the guy to go be out there and get you a bucket. It's just a matter of doing it. So I kind of waiting for that. He's a good basketball player. I'm waiting for Lamont Butler maybe to be the other option there when you need a bucket guy coming in here. But I think this is going to be a really, really tough game, Maddie. And one that we're going to see a lot of points and one that we're going to see some absolute, this is going to be in the 80s. I mean, absolutely a game that you just look at that's going to be in the 80s in this one.
Yeah, I like your point there on Otega Away. He is their leading scorer right now. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't he be the go-to bucket guy? But like you said, there's going to be a lot of points. Kim Palm expects this game to have a lot of points as well. They have it going 86-80. Gonzaga getting the win at 29%. So even Kim Palm's a little skeptical that it may not go Gonzaga's way, even though it's an away game for
At least they got labeled semi-home.
Right.
It's semi-home is what it is for Gonzaga. Yeah. I like the chances here. I think Kentucky wants to respond against Clemson or after that Clemson game, but really, there's a tough stretch of basketball here for Gonzaga, and they're really wanting to take one and two of these next games. This is the one that's home. The next one's semi away for them. I'm gonna go Gonzaga here because there should be a presence of a home crowd here. They're a team that's played some really darn good basketball to this point. I am not ignorant to the fact that Kentucky can win this game, but I'm gonna go Gonzaga. I think that's gonna be my pick here. It's tough enough, but yeah, just a little bit closer to home. Big travel week for Kentucky. Obviously, Kentucky wants a response, so I would say this one's gonna be super super close at the end of the day. Maddie.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's one of those coin flip games. I think it could go either way. I'm going to go with Gonzaga as well, namely because as Arkansas fans, we saw Caleb battle a lot last season. And, once he has a semi-shaky game, the next one he's going to go off. So,
Yeah.
semi-shaky game their last time out, I think he's probably going to be the guy to get it done this go-around.
I miss him already.
Same.
Well, I used to live in Kansas City. I worked in a newsroom with a bunch of Missouri and Kansas grads, and I know how big the game we're about to talk about is. It's the border war. Missouri faces the Kansas Jayhawks in Mizzou Arena. This will be the last time, at least as far as future scheduling is currently going, where this will be an on-campus game. The next meetings are scheduled to be in the T-Mobile Center in KC. Maddie, thoughts on what is one of the biggest rivalries in sports?
Yeah, so this is a big, big game that could have huge implications if Missouri could have this go their way. Unfortunately, I don't see that happening. We saw Missouri struggle against what is probably the worst team in the ACC with Cal. You've got a little bit of, I don't want to say the injury bug going around. But you got some guys on your team that make huge contributions that may or may not participate in this game. So I think that is going to be a big red flag here for Missouri in that injury to Caleb Grill.
A lot of pride on the line between these two teams. These two hate each other's guts. The one thing I didn't get to experience in Kansas, when I lived up there is an actual game like this. But like, let me tell you, they would talk trash to each other nonstop at work. You know, it's like one team loses in any sport, they just go back and trash the other one. It's crazy how much the fans, the students, everyone involved loves this game, and they love to hate the other team. Missouri's got a lot of talent. I'm going to be frank on that, and it's about getting that talent out there and playing to the maximum the potential that this team has. If you look at the depth chart right now at Kim Palm, and you look at Missouri, it's a cluster. Like it's hard to figure out. Like Kim Palm's, having problems kind of differentiate who's who, what role, who's this guy. Like trying to figure out what Missouri's running out there. But who's been consistent for Missouri this season is Anthony Robinson, Tamar Bates, and Caleb Grill. Now, I don't know the latest injury news about Caleb Grill. Just thankful that the injury turned out to be much less serious than what was originally discussed. Dennis Gates said that he wants Grill to get back to 100% healthy before seeing him suit up. It's a big blow to this team, and I certainly hope he gets back and playing basketball quickly. But there's issues on the court that need to be, addressed in his absence. Do you go with Marquise Portmore? Do you go and let a freshman like Anor Boating, who's got a very high ceiling, take a bigger role on this team? Dennis Gates right now, he's running like 12 guys. No one on this team is averaging more than 23 minutes. He's got a very deep bench right now. If you go back to the stats in the 2022-2023 season, the bench rotation was much more tight than what it is right now. So it makes me wonder when we're going to start seeing Dennis Gates starting to tighten the rotation up on this team. Flip it over to Kansas. Taking a look at Kansas right now, they're coming off a game they probably shouldn't have lost last night against Creighton. There's a very clear defined rotation for Kansas. Backcourt, you're going to see DeJuan Harris, you're going to see Zeke Mayo, and you're going to see AJ Storr. Backing them up, you're likely to see a rotation of David Coet, Rylan Griffin, the Alabama transfer, and then Rakes Passmore. The front court has got a very strong presence as well. KJ Adams, and of course Hunter Dickinson, and then Bidunga as well. And then you're going to see AJ Storr kind of mix in there a little bit. The two biggest offensive threats are Hunter Dickinson, who's coming off a poor game against Creighton, and Zeke Mayo, the South Dakota State transfer. Both these guys are capable of putting up points in different ways. Mayo is your biggest three-point threat, but Griffin, Storr, those guys can get hot from three as well. And this is not a high-volume three-point shooting team. They're only averaging about 7 a night right now. DeJuan Harris is going to be more of that guy who's going to facilitate, play really solid backcourt defense. Passmore is another good backcourt defender in the limited minutes that he's playing. Both the big guys, great defenders, sub 90 defensive rated players. Dickinson, KJ Adams, all capable of putting up decent rim protection as well and picking up at least one block a game. Look, Kansas is going to be royally upset with themselves after that Creighton game. They didn't show up. They played like whatever my dog left in the backyard after he got into the trash the other day. The Missouri at least is at home at this. If this was in the fog, I'd get really worried, and I wouldn't care how good Missouri would be if Kansas is, the number one team in the country, or should be right now. I would be really worried about Missouri on that front. But Missouri's got a lot of talent, and here they are in a home game. They're just waiting for it all to click. And this is a big, big opportunity. Kim Palm has this game 79-74, Kansas at 33%. Maddie, do you like the Jayhawks or do you like Missouri?
I like the Jayhawks having some tiger steak for dinner. And I feel like there's going to be a much bigger disparity in that score than what Kim Palm is predicting. Because like you said, they're going to be hungry and they are going to be relentless in this basketball game.
They were not kind words that Bill himself said about his own team, about their performance after that Creighton game. Yeah, I if Creighton hadn't beaten Kansas last night as bad as they did, I would sit here and go Missouri with the upset. There's no upset, catching Kansas off guard, going on now. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be necessarily a blowout, but if Kansas is the better basketball team, this like what everyone thinks, like they're looking for a win. And getting right with themselves. Like Hunter Dickinson played like trash the other night. A lot of these guys played bad, and it was just a horrible performance. I think everybody's going to be looking to pick themselves up after that basketball game. So yeah, I hate agreeing with you because I really wanted to come in here and say Missouri with the upset, but Kansas is a little bit in wounded animal mode right now, and it may be a fight. I think it's going to be much closer than you're implying here. I think it's going to be like, you know, somewhere. I think it'll be if Missouri responds talent wise, I think it'll be within like 10 points. It'll be like something like a couple of possessions. Who knows? Late, maybe Missouri has a chance, but I think overall this is a game Kansas and being in wounded animal mode comes out a little bit fast and furious. So I'm going to go Kansas because that just seems like the logical pick right here. As much as I was really like Missouri finally gets it.
I don't think it's going to be an absolute blowout. I'm thinking somewhere in the 10 to 15 point range. But on the road, I feel like that's a little disrespectful.
A little disrespectful going to Mizzou Arena. If you're thinking they're going to win by 30 or something like that, I don't think that's going to happen because
No, that's what I said, like 10 to 15 points.
okay, 10 point. I could 10 to 15 is not unreasonable, especially if Kansas, has a ridiculous week of practice that just starts like we are going to come out and we are going to hit every shot. If we have that moment out there, I think it could get crazy like that. But I don't know. I think there's much more talent on this Missouri team than what's been in the past. So like from a roster standpoint, I think there's a lot more opportunity here for Missouri to pull this upset than what there's been in the past and the last couple of years. So the roster's good, the team's good, they have the environment. Unfortunately, you have wounded animal Kansas. That's what I get worried about in this game.
UConn pays a visit to the Moody Center to play the Texas Longhorns. The Longhorns haven't had the most difficult schedule in the world to this point. Obviously, this is going to be a huge test here. UConn, however, has played a much more difficult schedule and are coming off a losing streak. 3 games in a row in Maui, but they bounced back against Baylor last night during the Big 12 Big East Challenge. UConn needs a win here in a big way with their record as of late. A huge road win against a good Texas team is a great way to do it. So Coach Terry needs to prep for a hungry Huskies team to come in and try and disrupt this home crowd.
Yeah, anytime you play the defending national champions, I don't think that's going to be the task that you want at your home. But Texas, they need a good win, and so does UConn. Both teams are looking for big wins. I think the Big East right now is a little bit hungrier for good wins than the SEC, because the SEC is going to get a ton of them during conference play. But for these teams like UConn, who are looking for things to give them a really good seed, and they're not going to find those opportunities this year in the Big East in comparison to how it's going to be in the SEC this season. But let's really get in this. Dan Hurley trying to get this UConn team back on track to the expectations this team had for this season. They want to be a contender in March. That's what the fans want. That's what Dan Hurley has been talking about all off season, and this is a big opportunity for them. For Texas, the Legends Classics wins didn't really produce the big wins to this point that most everyone's kind of looking at, and their schedule has been relatively weak. This is a big chance at home for them to get something on the resume. And regardless if UConn is a national title contender or not this season, this is going to be a successful team in the Big East, one way or the other, more than likely. So, one thing that I want to note in this game, the guard play. Maddie, both these teams, really, really good backcourts. And a player we both like. I mean, if you want to introduce everybody to the world to Tremont Mark, he's back now from injury for Texas. And, really, really good player. And right now, is any surprise to you that Tremont Mark is already putting up some of the best defensive rating numbers on this Texas team?
Not at all. I mean, we saw Tremont Mark a lot last year. He was a very versatile player. He can get you a score from the three. He can drive. He can shoot a mid-range shot. It may drive you crazy, but he is going to get a mid-range shot up somewhere in this game. He is a fantastic player, and he is going to be something that UConn is definitely going to have to address, along with freshman Trey Johnson, obviously being a huge contributor to this Texas team as well.
Yeah, but I asked you about the defensive end because you remember Razorback fans got really, really frustrated about Mark's defense last year.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah. I mean, he had some games where he was a great defender in those high impact, high pressure games. He could rise to the occasion. But if it wasn't a team that, you would expect to see in an NCAA tournament situation, it was almost like he was kind of just there.
Just not, I mean, yeah, I agree. He's been a good defender his entire career. And honestly, the numbers indicate he was one of the best defenders on Arkansas last season. To me, it's no surprise that he's putting up sub 100 numbers right now in just 4 games coming back from injury. He's playing really, really good. He's also played some not great teams overall so far with Texas. So, I mean, this will be the biggest step up challenge he has because he's going to have a lot of guards to deal with in this game. Hassan Daria, key guard for this team. And then Aiden Mahaney, while his numbers have been down this year, Mahaney had a big night against Baylor the other night, and it was a big moment for him since he was transferring to UConn. Last night was much more what Dan Hurley wanted to see from him this season. He's played a much large he can play a much larger role on this team, but he got sent to the bench after that Memphis game there in Maui. Now, after a bit of a breakout, could he be taking back that bigger role for UConn instead of having the minutes restriction that he's had? Your primary scorer though for the guards at UConn, Solo Ball. Solo Ball is going to be a constant 3-point threat for this team. Lee McNeely is going to be a primary number 3, but he will get in the mix in the number 4 spot as well. Big volume minutes for these guys. He's the second leading scorer on this team. And then for Texas and how they match up, the guard shouldn't be a problem. Texas has got a really good backcourt. Trey Johnson is doing exactly what we thought Trey Johnson was going to be doing this season, and that's get buckets. He's averaging 20 points a game right now. And then Jordan Pope and Julian Larry, you like to see more production out of them because you know they're capable of it. They certainly have a higher ceiling than what they're showing in this game or what they've been showing. So we're waiting for them to be good, but they've been good, not great. That's the thing. And then Shadell Weaver, who in the preseason we kind of thought would be taking a smaller role on this team this season, is seeing a considerable amount of time at the number 2 spot, and he hasn't been bad. In fact, his defense has been pretty darn good overall. But yeah, Rodney Terry. Right now, with Tremont Mark returning, he's been playing him about 22 minutes, and right, we're just waiting for him to have a big breakout game. He's had back-to-back games in double figures. You just hope that turns up here with as the competition gets turned up as well. Talked about the guards in this game. Maddie, the back or the front court. The front court is where mm, I
Yeah,
mean,
this is
yeah.
where I'm concerned when it comes to the Longhorns. We've talked about this being our concern with the Longhorns in preseason, in big games like this. UConn has a front court that's going to be hard to handle.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think Shedrick and I think for Texas Shedrick and I think Arthur Kaluma are playing good ball. They're good players. It's who comes after them, when they're off the floor. That's where the big hole is, and that's the issue in this team is your front court depth because like when you look at UConn's front court, really on this team, Alex Caravan, if he's healthy, is a heck of a basketball player. He didn't play against Baylor the other night. Jalen Stewart is a good second option at that number 5 spot as well. And he's someone who's a very proficient scorer in this. And both those guys are really, really good players at that number 4 spot. And Alex Caravan, he gets threes, he gets rebounds, he's got good size. He is a problem. And then Taurus Reed and Samson Johnson are going to be the guys at that number 5 spot. And that's where they're going to present a big problem. And that's going to be a huge issue for Shedrick in this game for Texas. And that's really where you start getting uncomfortable if you're a Longhorns fan. And I don't know how they match up there. And that to me is just the key difference between Texas and UConn in this game because it's not just 2 guys, it's 4 guys who could probably all start somewhere on a P5 roster across the country, any one of them. And instead, they're all in this collection of really good front court players on a team with a coach with 2 national titles. So, yeah, that's a recipe for a really really hard game, Maddie.
Yeah, I mean, Kim Palm definitely thinks this is going to be a hard game for the Longhorns. They've got this game 73-70 going to UConn at a 40% confidence rate. David, what are your thoughts on that? Where do you think this game is going to go?
I mean, Dan Hurley's mad. Dan Hurley's been acting like a crazy person the last couple of games. Aiden Mahay, I think it comes down to one player being out. If Alex Caravan's out, now you're on the road, and I think it gets a little bit more 50-50 at that point. So I will hedge my bet there. But I'm picking UConn in this game with the Huskies getting back on track to be the team that everyone's kind of suspecting they'll be. But there's a good chance for Texas to get an upset in this one if the backcourt can light it up from three, and you take some pressure off that front court's performance in this game. Maddie?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the front court winning this one for UConn. I think a lot of people know that Texas is not weak in the front court, but they, like you said, they just kind of lack depth. And you can't run the big guys for 40 minutes.
That's
So
a hard ask.
definitely so. So I think it is going to be close, especially if the backcourt, like you said, is having a fantastic performance. But I think UConn is going to definitely try and poke that Achilles with the front court there.
And we saw Syracuse attack it. I don't know why Dan Hurley wouldn't try to attack it. So that's what really changed the game in the second half and made Texas really, really uncomfortable in the Legends Classic. So good luck. I think Texas, though, does have a real chance to win this game. It would not surprise me if they pull the upset here. I don't like this. We're picking a lot against a lot of SEC teams after we just had thorough domination in the ACC SEC challenge, but this has just been weird. It's technically a neutral site game, though, for the Vanderbilt Commodores and the TCU Horned Frogs, but is it really when you're less than 3 miles from your campus when you're TCU playing in Fort Worth? It's game one of the Coast to Coast Challenge. Maddie, your thoughts of this TCU Vanderbilt matchup?
Yeah, so this is one of those games that I have kind of a question mark next to because we've seen TCU play great basketball. We've seen TCU play not great basketball. We've seen Vanderbilt really start to rise and, kind of be one of those teams that a lot of people are starting to circle on their schedules. So I'm interested to see kind of what TCU team shows up for this. One of the main things I want to look at here, one of their top performers for TCU is Uday. He is the only returner from last year's squad. So this is a whole new team, but that doesn't mean they're lacking in any way, shape, or form because it's got tons of talent. It's got lots of experience, but we're still early in the season. Could we have two teams that are lacking a little bit of chemistry? And I think sometimes that's what you see when you have teams that are playing great one night and not great another night, which could be said the same for the Commodores because it's a whole new team as well.
Yeah, it is definitely a new team for Vanderbilt. This is a massive opportunity for Vanderbilt. Their schedule is relatively light, all things considered, but a win at a neutral site or a win on the road is never something that you're going to turn your nose up to on your resume. This is a resume chance for Vanderbilt right here. Chance to get a win against another win against the big, or another win against a power conference team that should age something, right? And this is a neutral site game, so you got a longer range here to keep this a quad two game. I like how this game's going to go, but you were talking about like all this new talent here on TCU. You have four guys you really have to find answers for when you play TCU because you're going to get a heavy dose of Frankie Collins at the one, Nolan Reynolds at the two, Tazarian White at the number three, and Brendan Wenzel at the number four. This is going to be like a four guy rotation of guards, multiple wings kind of set up here for this team. And all those guys that I just mentioned, they're playing about 25 minutes or more a night. This is a smaller bench compared to in the rotation than what Vanderbilt kind of plays at. Frankie Collins is going to be a guard who's going to bring defense. He's going to lead this team in steal. He's leading this team in steals. He's facilitating the basketball. He's their leading assist man. Brendan Wenzel, he isn't a high volume shooter, but he is a shooter from deep, and he averages 40% from three and knocks down about 2.1 threes a night. Tazarian White is a big time athlete, do a little bit of everything kind of guard, and then guard forward combo, and then also in the backcourt you have Vassian Alete, I believe is how you pronounce it. Again, sometimes I haven't watched enough basketball for the word to register in my ear. I apologize to the kid, but he's the most efficient scorer on the team. And he's going to be the one who mixes in and plays probably the least amount of minutes, but he's going to be very highly productive for this team. And then your front court, you were talking about it. Ernest Adu, getting there in the mix. And then also David Punch there in the front court as well. Both these guys are averaging the same points per 40 right now. Very efficient team. Like I said, short bench. They got a lot of balance, and these guys they all mentioned 20 minutes on average, and they're going to put up a range between 6 to 12 points a night. For me, Maddie, or actually, let me ask you, Maddie, what do you think the difference is in this game for Vanderbilt?
I think the thing for Vanderbilt, when you look at their roster, they do have a lot of talent. They do have a lot of guys. But I feel like the talent is just a little bit more elevated when it comes to TCU. You've got guys, like you said, you've got some Swiss Army knife players. You've got guys that are going to get out there and get the job done. I think you've got some of those guys on Vanderbilt, but I don't know. It just hasn't really clicked yet for me. It I just can't confidently say, they can take this game away and get a win here against a team like TCU.
Okay, what's holding you back on that? Let me ask that before I ask for your pick for real, for real.
I don't know. Maybe just, it may be like a Tennessee thing, like we talked about earlier, just not quite having that resume yet to prove that they're going to be a certain caliber team.
Well, they just went on the road and beat Virginia Tech, so they got a Power Five win in this whole thing. To me, the difference in this game, these teams are opposite, really, for as I mentioned. But for Vanderbilt, they're a team that's going to want to play fast, and they've got the depth. And it's going to be about getting guys going like Jason Edwards and making sure that he's going. And it's going to depend on the night that AJ Hoggard, Devin McLaughlin, and Tyler Nickel have for this team. That's where the difference to me is going to be for Vanderbilt. For me, Vanderbilt's going to want to get out fast. They're going to want to shoot more, but the big thing is going to be the level of defense that Vanderbilt plays going in this game. Right now, Vanderbilt is outside the top 100 defenses in college basketball. It's their weak spot. It's just where it is, and we saw Drake take full advantage of it there in the Charleston Classic. This is the worst adjusted defense in the SEC. The good news, as bad as Vanderbilt's defense is, and I use bad relatively here because they are much improved from last year. But TCU's offense is also not great. It's just frankly not a good offense because there is just no volume to it at all. And this team is going to play much slower and they're just not getting points in the process of it. And honestly, TCU's defense is really just not that much better. I mean, like at the end of the day, yeah, they're playing just a little, they're up there, but I mean, there's a reason this team's 4-3. So to me, like if Vanderbilt's defense slows down TCU's offense, even just for a few extra possessions here and there, I think it's a big advantage for Vanderbilt in this game. Kim Palm's got it, Maddie. Let's just break it down. It's got this game 75-74. 49% going to TCU in this one. Maddie, are you taking the Commodores or are you taking the Horned Frogs?
I'm taking the basically home court advantage here with Frogs. I feel like if it was more of a neutral site game, Vanderbilt would have a great chance at winning this basketball game as long as your backcourt is having a night where they're making baskets. But I am going to go the Frogs just because, like you said, 3 miles. Surely a team can travel, or a team's fans can travel 3 miles.
Yeah, I would think they travel as well. But you know who's also coming home in this? You know who played at North Texas over there in Denton, just north of Fort Worth? Jason Edwards, and this is a coming home game for him. I'm going Vandy in this one. Give me the doors to get a big win, and probably one of their best ones of the season thus far this season. So I'm gonna go Vandy. We'll see what happens.
Is there anything better than a rivalry being restored, David? Game 2 of the Coast to Coast Challenge. We got a clash between a former Big 12 and Southwest Conference rivals, Texas A&M and Texas Tech.
Yeah, big game here. Premier rebounding battle going down between these two. You got JT Toppin on Texas Tech, who could go for a ton of rebounds a night, and then you have the collective rebounding of Texas A&M and the Aggies fighting for every stinking board in the game. I have no doubts that Texas A&M is fighting for rebounds because they do it very well. To me, that's going to be the premier battle of the entire night, is watching one man fight the entire Aggies on the glass all evening long. And that guy happens to be one of the best basketball players in the country this season. So, Maddie, your thoughts on this game, and I'll dive deeper into it.
Yeah, this is going to be a tall task for Texas A&M. Tech is currently sitting at second in the Big 12, with the only blemish on their record being a loss to St. Joe's. While they haven't faced any major teams, I mean, rivalry obviously tends to bring out the best in teams. I mean, looking over this, like you said, JT Toppin, fantastic basketball player, 18.6 points per game, 11 rebounds per game. And when you look at the metrics of each team, Texas Tech tends to be higher on the scoring side, but Texas A&M
Really good
obviously,
defense. Yeah.
yeah, the defense is a higher caliber than the teams Texas Tech has been playing. You look at it, obviously Texas A&M, great rebounding team. Texas Tech, like you said,
One man
JT.
wrecking crew.
Exactly. But what Texas Tech does do well, they pass the ball, they get a lot of assists, which again, you got to think Texas A&M gets a lot of second chance opportunities. So getting those boards, having the higher rebound percentage could give them an advantage there. And Texas Tech tends to allow less points per game than Texas A&M. So I think, like you said, it's going to come down to the battle of the boards in this game.
Yeah, and it'll come down to me also like how much you can limit JT Toppin on the defensive end with Farrell Payne playing some really good defense if you're Texas A&M. But like the matchup that I find is super intriguing is that you've got guys like Chance McMillan leading your leading 3-point shooter on Texas Tech, and he's hitting twos and threes like crazy out there. You got Anderson, Kevin Overton in various spots on the floor. You got Kerwin Walton. It's another good shooter on this Texas Tech team, and this is a darn good backcourt that they have. So for Texas Tech, you're going to want Wade Taylor to get his, obviously, and you're going to want get good defense out of Zurt Phelps. You're going to want to watch this entire, you want Manny Obaski, you want everyone getting out there and fighting, running Texas Tech out the perimeter, and then getting those offensive and defensive rebounds and fighting, for every board in this game. And this is going to be really, really a tough matchup. And then when JT Toppin is not on the floor, and he's one of the best big men in the country, we're not joking about that. The Robin to his Batman is Darian Williams, who's also a big time scorer, putting up 17 points a game right now. So you got one problem after another in this Texas Tech team. They're a well constructed basketball team from a roster standpoint. Tough game for Texas A&M, but the Aggies play their style of basketball, and don't make me define what that is because it's fight for everything nonstop is how it works. And then let Wade Taylor get his kind of at times is how it comes down. This is the second best adjusted defense in the SEC. Do Texas A&M things, and Texas A&M can win this game just straight up because they are as a collective. Henry Coleman getting out there and getting some boards. The rest of the entire backcourt getting out there and helping getting boards. The front court getting out there and getting like everything about Texas A&M is second chance opportunities and finding ways to score off those second chance opportunities. So you go out there and you Texas A&M this game up. I mean, and play the Texas A&M way for Buzz Williams. We're gonna have a crazy one, and yeah, a really, really good opportunity here. Kim Palm has this game. I kind of messed Maddie up here and didn't include it in the list. I apologize to her, so I got to dig it up now. Kim Palm has this game 71-70, 47% Texas Tech. Maddie, who are you going with here on this neutral site game? They're in DFW.
I'm gonna go Texas A&M here. I just have a good feeling that the front court for A&M has been playing very, very well, and I think if they have their sights set on JT Toppin, they're gonna be able to stop him.
If they get in there and get in the fight, yeah, it'll be really tough. Look, Texas Tech is a good basketball team. I don't doubt that they're going to be in the fight in this one. This is also a team that got hung around with Syracuse a little too long in St. John's as well. So there's obviously something going on under the hood. But Texas Tech, it sometimes takes a minute for a team to click. I'm with you though. I'm going Texas A&M. I thought I was going to talk myself into taking Texas Tech, but I'm going with Buzz. I'm going with Buzz, and what's going to be if Texas Tech or Texas A&M rebounds like that, we know how they're going to rebound, and they take away those opportunities where JT Toppin goes for 20 boards in a game and something ridiculous, and they limit him from Farrell. If Farrell Payne's out there limiting him, Give me the Aggies. Give me the Aggies. I like that one.
It's
Other
a
action this weekend on Saturday, Arkansas takes on UTSA. South Carolina faces East Carolina. Ole Miss plays Lindenwood, and Oklahoma faces Alcorn State. Then on Sunday, Auburn takes on Richmond. LSU gets Florida Gulf Coast, and Mississippi State takes on Prairie View A&M.
Cheese real quick. I'm gonna miss you guys. Can y'all cheese real quick? Thank you.
Let me get a picture, y'all.
Y'all see how I put him on stuff? Now he want to get a picture. I love you guys, Bob, especially you.
Hey, Bob,
Love you guys.
Bob, you might be
Here you go.
cold this way.
Here you go. Oh, get in here. Get in here. Everybody. You too. You're not typing that much. Get in here. Come on. Get in here. Oh, no. Wait. I got to get my picture.
Look at my media. I love y'all.
There we go. Oh. You took your glasses off. Wait, Bob, sit. Ready? There we go. Y'all the best. Appreciate it.
We got some very sad news here in the state of Arkansas this week. Legendary Arkansas beat writer Bob Holt passed away at the age of 65 after a medical emergency. Holt was a longtime beat writer for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette out of Little Rock. He was a graduate of the famed journalism school at the University of Missouri. He spent his entire career covering his home state Razorbacks. He was named the Arkansas Sports Writer of the Year 4 times. He was a member of the Arkansas Sportscasters and Sports Writers Hall of Fame. He was also a member of the Football Writers Association and on the board of directors for USA Basketball Writers Association. Holt was a Heisman Trophy voter and AP Top 25 voter. Hunter Yurchek, athletic director of Arkansas, had this to say. We're saddened to hear the news of the loss of longtime Arkansas sports writer Bob Holt. Bob was the consummate journalist who helped tell the stories of Razorback student athletes, coaches, and fans to millions of readers across our state and beyond for 4 decades. His never-ending curiosity was genuine and allowed him to be inquisitive in a way that would allow him to get to the heart of any topic. Bob will be missed by many in our Razorback family, throughout the Southeastern Conference, and within collegiate athletics. Our thoughts and condolences are with his family and all those who had the pleasure of knowing him. On Tuesday, after the Miami game during the SEC-ACC Challenge, John Calipari had this to say. One of our beat writers, Bob Holt, I don't know if my prayers will help, but I know they don't hurt, Calipari said. And I tell everyone, just pray a nice prayer for Bob Holt, one of the good guys in the profession. Literally, you think about a good guy, that's who he is. So it's a sad day for all Arkansas fans in our state. A 2014 AL.com profile once described Holt as the most curious reporter at SEC Media Days and a reluctant cult hero. Bob Holt once said, I don't work for the Wall Street Journal. I don't work for the New York Times. I don't work for the USA Today. I work for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. And like Bill Clinton says, it's a small, wonderful state. But to me, you always have to go for the local angle. I mean, you always have to. I've gotten jokes about that. So-and-so flew over Arkansas, so you're going to be doing a story on them. John Neighbors of Inside Arkansas shared one of his favorite Bob Holt clips and moments on social media today. And I got to admit, I cracked up watching this, especially with the context of basketball today.
Hey, John, Bob Holt, Arkansas Democrat. I added 2-parter if that's okay. You mentioned Arkansas. Eric.
Why do you always talk about Arkansas? But go ahead.
Well, why do you always talk about Kentucky?
So I never got to meet Bob Holt when I got my start in the media world here in Arkansas, but I can tell you that the people who gave me my first chance into work in television and do the occasional sports writing and things like that never had a bad word to say about Bob. I also grew up in Central Arkansas and grew up reading the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. My father would read the paper in the morning and on the way to a fishing trip or on the way to a game in Fayetteville or War Memorial on game day. When he would get done with the sports page, I'd read it. I don't know how many Bob Holt articles I've read in my life. I mean, it's probably hundreds. I probably read as many Bob Holt articles out of the Democrat Gazette as I did Dr. Seuss or Hank the Cowdog as a kid. My parents didn't care if that I was reading the sports page, they just cared that I was reading. But I think it's fair to say that Bob Holt had an impact on my lifelong fandom of the Razorbacks and countless other Arkansans, whether they realize it or not. Fellow Arkansas Democrat Gazette writer Wally Hall had this to say. Bob Holt, one of the last great true journalists, passed away at 10:38 tonight. Ironically, the doctor on duty was a former Razorback baseball player. Bob was an amazing person, kindest, most gentle man in the world, always lifting people up and helping them.
You said you and Diva are OGs, old guys. If I, or
Yeah,
what?
like OGs, yeah, like like yeah, I guess you could put it as old guys for sure. Like we're the old guys of the team, the vets.
Oh, well, no. What did you mean? I'm sorry, I'm not that hip.
That's pretty much what I meant.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kamani.
No problem.
Guys, if you have not already, please like and subscribe to the Hoop Southbound show. We greatly appreciate you guys being here and following along with us all week. Sunday's show will be coming out a little bit later. It'll be sometime late Sunday or Monday due to the Texas UConn game, obviously a game that we want to cover for this. So big game there. But guys, if you have not already, please like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.